Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Quober, and today Maxine Taylor is back, and she wrote a very interesting book. The title is How to, oh my goodness, now it escaped me. Your first sexual imprint. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Sexual imprinting. That is what we are going to talk about. I'm so sorry for that mistake.
Hey, no, I got the book. No problem, Judith.
So, Maxine, welcome back.
Thank you.
Before we jump into that topic at hand, because you are an astrologer and a very good one, so I would just like to have a few tidbits of, because I read what some other astrologers were saying, and there is the North Node now reversing into Taurus. That will happen in January. And some also said that the eclipses have an upbeat energy and that 2022 will not be as stuck, depressing, and depraved as 2020, for instance. What say you? Have you looked at that?
Actually, I haven't gone into the details yet, but because we have a new president who is doing the very, very best he knows how, based on what he inherited, of course. The world has COVID. We have financial problems, the whole 9 yards. I do believe with, first of all, I'm going to give you astrological jargon. Because Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, everything is confused. We know that. But Venus is joining in the fray at the end of 2021 and into 2022. So you've got the tag team from hell. And not that Mercury and Venus are from hell, but when they get together, it's like Heckle and Jekyll. And so when Venus, which rules love and money and all the beautiful things, goes retrograde, it's not that our money goes retrograde. It acts exactly like a Mercury retrograde. So we've got Mercury retrograde and Venus acting like Mercury retrograde. Starting, I wish I had, don't go away. Okay, my dear. I'm going to give you dates, astrological dates. Good grief, I should have known you were going to do that. All righty. Our next retro starts the 27th of this month. Mercury goes retrograde on the 27th. We're in the shadow of the retrograde. Have you noticed that everything feels retrograde? Mm-hmm. Because that's the shadow. The shadow says, hey, I'm getting ready to go retro. Let me give you a sample. Okay. And so then Mercury goes retrograde on September 27th. Mercury goes direct, thank God, on October 19th, but then it goes into the after retrograde shadow, where it will be till November 2nd. Okay. November 18th, we have this much of a breather. Venus moves into the shadow. And it goes retrograde on December 19th. Now, Mercury, in the middle of that time, on the 29th of December, moves into the shadow. And so I'm going to fast forward because without going into the dates, Venus is the outermost parameter of the Mercury-Venus retrograde. It goes direct March 1st. So we're talking about November 18th, 2021 to March 1st. I don't care what's going on. Everything is going to be confused and unsettled. And we know how it is with people in power. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And with Mercury and Venus both retrograde, we don't, even when they're not retrograde, politicians flip-flop. They say one thing one day, and maybe later that afternoon, they change their tune. And when they're confronted on it, it's like they're brain dead. They don't know what you're talking about. I am going to be returning to my monthly political forecasts for the United States. And the reason I say the United States is because I've got the chart. I don't have the chart for the world.
Yeah.
Okay. When was it born, for goodness sake? Or for the different countries, because there have been revolutions. That's how countries are formed, on war. I mean, so I'm going to be, in fact, after this show, your timing is impeccable, Judith. After this show, I'm going to video my September forecast for the United States. And my dear webmaster has given me thumbnails for the next year. I found it physically painful to do forecasts for the United States for the past 4 years. It made me physically ill because my energy is here and the powers that be in politics were somewhere else. And it was so painful, I would get sick. I realized that I have information just as you want it. I have information for people. People want hope. They want to know that there is a silver lining. And the answer is yes. And I'm going to tell you when I see it happening. I'm going to leap forward, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Well, even if I not may, I'm going to leap forward. I'm looking at the United States chart because that's the one I've got. In the United States chart, Pluto is in late Capricorn. Pluto has an orbit of 248 years. And so we are reliving the American Revolution. That is the karma that's been going on here. Pluto will make its final conjunction. Transiting Pluto will make its final conjunction in 2024. That is when the upheaval, and we have had upheavals in the United States, unlike any we have seen. We have climate change, and so many people have poo-pooed it. Well, you can't poo-poo this, everything that's been going on with the flooding and the typhoons.
I would say stop the geoengineering and you are halfway there. It has nothing to do with CO2.
And it's going to continue. And it will work, at least in the United States, when Pluto makes its final conjunction from transiting to natal. We will be done with that. And that includes COVID. And I do believe in bioengineering on everything that's going on now. Everything.
Yeah.
Can I prove it? No. Do I have to? No. But I'm just giving the facts. It will be over at that point in time. And a lot of people have said to me, you mean we have to wait till 2024? It's going to be here before we know it. So I hope that answers your question.
So it will be a little bit more enjoyable.
I'm not sure how enjoyable living with retrogrades is. Also, Mars is going to go retrograde during that time. And what I found, Judith, maybe you have too, is that when Mars goes retrograde, first of all, every planet except the sun and the moon, because they're not considered planets, has a shadow, the pre-retrograde shadow. Well, the slower the planet moves, the longer the shadow is. Okay, so Mars is action, Mars is energy, Mars is what we throw ourselves into. It rules commerce, it rules war, it rules gunfire. The reason I knew that the United States was going to be in trouble was that Mars was crossing its ascendant. And that was the populace. And I didn't say that because I didn't want to start World War III. I didn't want to be involved in that, but I was scared to death because I saw what was happening in the leadership and in the United States chart, because we also had an eclipse on our ascendant. I used the Gemini ascendant chart. It works. And so I saw all this stuff, and Judith, I didn't know what to say. I was sick looking at it. I knew there would be gunfire. Did I know that they would turn on the Capitol? No, I did not. Did I know what you and I talked about before? I couldn't prove it. But the facts were saying it loud and clear. And I got so depressed because there was nothing I could do. And now what I see that I can do is I can do a monthly forecast for all my friends around the globe. So when Mars, getting back to Mars retrograde, when Mars goes retrograde, all action stops. We flatline.
Yeah, that's, I wanted to say that it feels very stuck. Everything flatlines. It feels as if everything is flat on its face.
And the beauty is, and I'm so happy to have watched this over the years. I used to give I call it the prequel and the sequel, the shadow, the pre-retrograde shadow and the post-retrograde shadow. I used to give it a lot of power, but that I'm an empath. I feel it more than a lot of other people do. And those of your viewers who are empaths do the same thing. They know exactly what I'm saying. So I was so happy because when I saw Mars going flatlining in the shadow, it was a slow down. It didn't come to a screeching halt. Now you talk about Mercury and Venus, they're quick moving planets. And so when Mercury goes into the shadow, it's boom, quick and retro. Venus, the same way, except Venus, it takes longer. It's retrograde longer. Mars, way longer. And this is why Neptune has a shadow. Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, Uranus. I pronounce it Uranus. I'm not a Uranian. I could never do that. I'm too old. I learned it as Uranus and Uranus. So we've got these retros and we've got the shadows, and we're here on planet Earth in third dimensional reality. And that means for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, the laws of science. Yep. We are third dimensional, which means opposites. Day, night, male, female, up, down, left, right, wrong, heaven, hell. That's how we function. And so what I'm thrilled to do is get my clients and myself and my girlfriends, of course, past that, because that's left brain thinking. And left brain thinking knows only what it knows. That's it.
Yeah.
And so this is why I have written these 2 books.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I was going to ask what prompted this idea to write a book about sexual imprint. I mean, it's not the most usual subject, especially not for an astrologer.
I'm a woman, I'm a person, and I'm a humanitarian. And I have watched women be put down since I was a little girl. We accept it. It's in the Bible. It's something that is not fair. It's something that is unequal. In my 50 plus years as an astrologer, I've interviewed women, and I learned all about programming. And I thought, where did it begin? Well, it began in utero. Oprah Winfrey has just come out with a new book written by herself and a scientist who says the baby's programming, the fetus's programming, is stronger than anything that happens after birth. And I have always felt that way. I've interviewed women about their childhood, about their programming. And when I started studying programming, I studied it in the birth chart. And this book, Hidden, that I wrote recently, Hidden Messages in Your Birth Chart, you interviewed me on this book. It's to help people understand those hidden messages that own them. And I'm a very positive person. And what I say is, if you know what the programming is, you can change it. But most astrologers don't know that. Mm-hmm. They still blame Saturn. They still think it's the bad guy. Mm. They don't know that the chart is simply a snapshot of your movie for this lifetime. You can go round and round. There's a movie, Groundhog Day, years ago, with Bill Murray. And what he did was he saw that his day repeated, every day repeated. But if he would look at yesterday, he could change today. And that is why I wrote Move Into the Magic. Mm. Because you're not stuck with your programming. People say, oh, well, when is Saturn going to be finished with me? When you're finished with Saturn, you're blaming a planet. The planets don't make us do anything. Mm. They tell our story for us. Because in the Bible it said, and God put the stars in the heavens for signs. Mm-hmm. Astrologers can read the signs. And if an astrologer is negatively programmed, that astrologer is going to give out negative forecasts. How does that lift our planet? It doesn't. So these are the hidden messages. Excuse me. These are the hidden messages. This one is Move Into the Magic. And it was, I interviewed 5 women who gave their stories anonymously, except for one, and how I use my Take Back Your Life method. It's a method I've studied for years, and I modified Move Into the Magic because I've changed a lot of it from what I've seen. And I see people walking around like zombies, holding on to political opinions that are absolutely antiquated and crazy. They're not thinking straight. Because when you are coming from your programming, you are easily hypnotized. Mm-hmm. And we have, I don't know about you, but I see people who are interviewed on the news, and they're in Congress, and they're in the Senate, and they're totally hypnotized. Mm-hmm. And so I said, all right, I am a women's libber, for whatever that means. My mission is to empower people to empower themselves. And I saw, in the United States, we talk about Black Lives Matter. Mm. Black lives do matter. Yellow lives matter. Red lives matter. Women's lives matter. And there have been scapegoats. And the programming that Blacks have received promulgates that. And so I have a lot of friends of all beliefs.
Yeah, with the scapegoating, that reminded me the Hitler era here in Germany. They started out by convincing everybody that Jews are spreaders of disease.
Why, yes, my dear friend. Yes. Mm-hmm. And
And I thought, what a coincidence.
I know. And we heard about that recently from somebody in our Congress. God bless them. I mean, and spreading a lie. You repeat a lie often enough, and people believe it because they can be hypnotized. And I remember reading that book, Machiavelli, little booklet, like 40, 50 years ago when I was in college, about how to rule people. How do you treat the masses? And I was drawn to that book because it was very revealing. I remember Vance Packard wrote a book or two about hidden messages, how in a movie theater they can just put a couple of frames out and you're hungry for popcorn and you go. And I thought, I'm interested in this hypnosis. Not that I want to be a hypnotist, I don't, but how easily we can be fooled. And this is why it is vitally important to get rid of that negative programming, which led me to this book. And the minute I opened my mind to it, women came forward from the woodwork. All I had to say was, I'm writing a book about our first, when I'm speaking to a woman, about our first sexual imprinting. And they'd say, what do you mean imprinting? I'd say first sexual experience. And they went, oh, I want to talk to you. They came forward and I've interviewed them anonymously. There are no real names. I'm so blessed because they told me things they had never told anyone. And I have a part of the book, which I have only read this much of it in little snippets. And this blew me away. And I'm going to tell you what it is. It's in part 2 of this book. And I'm the only one I know of who has written this, and the only astrologer. But it's not astrology. It's beyond astrology. You can be sexually molested without it being sexual.
Yeah.
It is subliminal. And there are 2 stories in this powerful book that courageous women shared with me anonymously. I mean, you know, if you've been abused sexually, if you were raped starting at 5, you are programmed to be raped for the rest of your life. Now you can fight it, you can resist it, but the program is there. Okay. What I realized was that a lot of women have been hypnotized.
Okay.
And when it happens to a woman, when she's, say, 3 years old, she doesn't have the language to express what happened, but she does see her mommy and daddy's faces when she tells them what happened, and they are horrified. They don't know what to do. Maybe they take her to a psychologist. I hope they get help for her. In my private practice of Take Back Your Life, I have dealt with these women. They have come to me. I am not a psychologist, but I don't think you need alphabet soup after your name. I don't think you need a degree. All you need is love and compassion and a desire to serve. And at my age now, I'm about giving back. And this book was written to expose what little girls can't tell, especially the non-sexual sexual abuse. It is real. And a lot of the women I spoke with, as they told it to me, they couldn't find the words. And they said, I know this sounds crazy. And I said, no, it doesn't.
Hmm. Can you give us an example for non-sexual sexual rape?
Yes, absolutely. Let me think about, I have to kind of think of the ones in the book. I only had a couple to share because it's hidden from the person. It's hidden from the person. Okay, there's a story. I'll give one of the stories. This is an outspoken woman. She's brilliant. She is a successful businesswoman. All of these women are very, very successful, which is very interesting to me. Don't you think that they have managed to overcome? Well, when she was a little girl, again, if it happens to you as an adult, it's because it probably happened to you as a child and you've stuffed it, or you verbalized it and nobody did anything about it. Okay. So she was at her home and she was sitting on the lap of a friend of the family, a guy. And he touched her inappropriately, put his hand in her panties and touched her inappropriately. Okay, that was the setup. She's set up then, she's programmed. Fast forward, not too terribly long after that, her mother started beating her. And she was too young to know why. She had no idea. And a lot of women were beaten. And they don't know why, but they know that it feels horrible and they're terrified because they're told, I'm gonna get a belt, I'm gonna beat you. And the little girl doesn't know what she's done wrong. And so if I remember the story correctly, the baby, the girl, was sobbing, crying, saying, please don't beat me, mommy. No, that's beating. Let's say she did something terrible and horrible. Mother is disciplining her. But this is past disciplining. And as I talked with this friend of mine, she said, you know, I remember this strange look would come over my mother's face when she was beating me, and she would rub herself. This is a little baby girl's recollection.
So it turned the mother on.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if the perpetrator is having a sexual experience, the little kid, the little baby, feels the energy, doesn't identify it because she's 3 or 2 or 5. And once it happens, she's programmed for it. Now, all the stories of women I interviewed have a happy ending because I insisted on it. I carried them through because they were sharing their stories. I carried them through the Take Back Your Life process. And you can plug that into any subject. And so, of course, it was your first sexual imprinting. And this wonderful woman realized, I think she was 16, and she was still sobbing hysterically. And she turned around on to her mother. She didn't realize her mother was having an orgasm when this happened. And she said, I won't let you do that to me anymore. It's over. And it was. And so when I worked with this woman, I thought, now there is a success story. She is not alone. But because the child doesn't know it has never been exposed to sex, doesn't recognize what's going on. I have most of the other stories are all overt stories of molestation or rape or inappropriate. There's an anecdote. On each step, I included an anecdote, and one of the women, this was very interesting. She was at a family wedding, and was dancing with an uncle. And she was, I think, in her 20s or 30s. She was a young girl, and young girls are pretty, you know. And her uncle, while they were dancing, leaned in and kissed her very inappropriately, very sexually. And she didn't know what to do. What do you do? Also, he was the family benefactor.
Yeah.
So he had power, and she didn't know what to do. So after sometime after the wedding, she told her mother. I think it was her mother. I remember I put all these stories in here anonymously, and I erased the videos that I did on them. So it's like, okay, it's now in the book. I don't have to keep it in my head. So forgive me if I'm not sure who the woman was, but I believe it was her mother. And she told her mother what had happened, and her mother blew it off.
Yeah, that is one of the most frustrating experiences when children have been molested and abused, maybe even by a family member, or it's I'm not saying it does not happen, but it's usually somebody who the family knows. You know, the big, scary foreign guy that you have never seen that comes to the playground. As I said, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Judith. And the thing that upsets me more than anything for all the women out there, because I'm of an age where people turn to me as a mentor. They want me to teach them astrology. They want me to teach them Take Back Your Life and all that. And I'm very protective of these young people, because everybody's younger than I am, but young people. And the family dynamic is such that very often the parents feel trapped. They don't know what to do because the family benefactor is very important. You know, that's where the money comes from. And yet to act inappropriately. Now, in the story I told about the woman being beaten since childhood for what she didn't know, she had the strength to turn on her mother. In the other example that I used, it was a family doctor that identified it. It's very, very interesting. So I think there were like 10 people I interviewed. 2 of them are the non-sexual, sexual imprinting. So I feel like that might be a representative sample of how many people know or actually don't know about non-sexual molestation. I did read in one book, a woman had written a marvelous book, and I think she called it, I called it sexual surrogacy. The child is used as a sexual surrogate. And you can't take the perpetrator to court. There's no proof, but the feeling coming from the perpetrator is what the child holds on to forever. And this is what leaves them vulnerable from then on. And this, you know, the Me Too movement is huge. in the United States, women coming forward and destroying the reputation of some very well-known men. And fortunately, they are now being believed, but you have to be very careful. Just because somebody accuses someone of something doesn't mean they're guilty of it. And that, to me, is just as important as reporting what goes on. One of my students, my Take Back Your Life students, went to her parents and told, she was like 3 or 4, and she told her parents what had happened. And they freaked, and they sent her to a shrink who couldn't help her. But she's too young. She did, I mean, you know what I'm saying. And so she never resolved it. And so it was passed along to her daughter. Remember, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And if the mother was sexually abused, she is programmed for it. And there can be, without the child realizing it, when they are in utero, they are feeling what the mother felt, what she experienced. And that is why I wrote this book. And that's why so many of my books have hidden and secrets in them, because the birth chart tells it all. But if you don't know what you're looking at, you can't see it. And that doesn't mean that just because you have a particular planet in a particular house that you're vulnerable to being raped. No, you're not. You may be a researcher that wants to expose something to free you up. Otherwise, you go round and round on the wheel of karma. And
the hostility towards women is sometimes really surprising. Even in the so-called truth movement, you hear sometimes statements where the Taliban, but they are right about women. And then other shit like, we should have never left them out of the kitchen. Yeah. Here you are, fucker. Yeah. Complaining about your rights being taken away and trampled on, yet at the same time, you are perfectly okay with doing it to half of the population. And you fuckers think that you are somehow awakened. No,
tell me how you really feel, honey.
You're a piece of shit.
Well, now see, I have not used that verbiage for obvious reasons. And so I'm very grateful to you for using it.
That I just called it a spade.
I think that's why I like you so much. I think that's why I like you so much. And I have yet to meet a woman who, when I tell them about this book, doesn't say, send me a copy. How can I get a copy? Well, it's on Amazon. It's been on sale. I haven't, I don't even know how it's selling. My whole thing was putting it out there and let it take on a life of its own, because it's time. Oh, I was talking about the Me Too movement here in the United States. And it is very, very important that everything that is said be vetted, because accusations can destroy a person.
Okay, sure.
I love men.
I'm not a man hater. I just freak out when they come with their, Stone Age bullshit. Yeah. And on top of it, are proud of it, parading around and think they are almost enlightened.
Well, we used to call them here in the United States male chauvinist pigs. We did, which is not I mean, there are a lot of pompous men. They just didn't know. And now they're being educated, just as with racial issues in the United States. I mean, this is the Pluto that we talked about. This is the unearthing of what's really going on. The when you say draining the swamp, oh yeah. Oh yeah, to drain it, you have to show it, you have to represent it, and you have to identify it. And I was very upset by all of the men who were exposed for having acted inappropriately. It really disappointed me. I guess I was too naive, Judith. And this is why when I wrote this book, I went, oh my God. Because I couldn't believe what they were saying. And what I did, let me just tell you the backstory here. Everybody wanted me to interview them. They volunteered. And so I said, well, I will carry you through the process. I'll do it on Zoom, and I'll send you the video. Will you write it up in your own language for my book? I'll edit it maybe this month much. And what I did was I kept some of the dirty words out of it. That's the only thing I did. Because I wanted the woman's own feelings to emerge. You know, if you write a book, you know that you can be edited out of your own book because the editor neutralizes everything. I didn't neutralize things.
Yeah.
And I was scared. I didn't know what kind of reaction it would be. And I still don't know. But you know what, Judith? I had to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I had to tell the truth. And in so doing, I interviewed the women, and hopefully their stories will inspire other women. And I am available, of course, as part of my private practice beyond astrology to take back your life on any subject. And like I said, next time I'm doing money.
Yeah.
Because it is time for women. And there are many very wealthy women of all nationalities who have said, I don't care, I'm doing it. And they are success stories. And that's why every story in my book has a happy ending, because these women are successful. And when you have been molested time and time and time again, and then you find somebody who is on your side, who wants your story and wants to support you. I mean, to have a friend, it's worth everything.
So sexual imprinting has many layers. It has also to do with what type of partner we will prefer. And that is, of course, the next problem that might arise from that, meaning people have a tendency to look for their father or their mother subconsciously, or they somehow have to make sure that daddy or mommy likes the guy or the girl that they bring along. And and that I find is another trap that can make life very, very complicated if you do certain things to please your parents. You know what I mean?
You are brilliant. You are brilliant, Judith. Absolutely. And this is why I say, let's go through. Well, I'm going to tell you what's in the book so that you have a sense of how accurate you are. We are programmed by what we see. If our father is cold, aloof, and distant, that was my father. Cold, aloof, and distant, and unaffectionate. The only time he told me he loved me was when I was doing the dishes. My mother lost her brother, and she was at some pre-funeral event. And so I washed the dishes to save her having to do it. This was ages ago. We didn't have dishwashers then. I was the dishwasher that day. And my father said, "I love you for doing the dishes." Okay, so I was programmed to have a cold, aloof, distant, cheap male. My father, money was everything. And I've been married and divorced, and I'm happy to say that my ex-husband and I have completed.
Mm-hmm.
Do I plan on ever getting married again? No.
Yeah, me
No,
not either.
no reason to.
No.
Boyfriend, sure, but I'm not out there banging the bushes, so to speak, because I have a labor of love and my mission.
Mm.
First, I thought my mission was to legalize astrology, which I did, and it was, but this has gone way beyond that. Okay, so take back your life. We start with the lie that you are bad. Every
Yeah.
child that I know of had, and I only work with people who have received this message, so surprise. They have received a message that they're bad. And it came about when they were simply being children and having fun. We work on we identify the bad message, and there's a technique for releasing it, and we replace it with the good message. Okay, then the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Mother is everything. We think like our mother. And so in this particular situation, my question to the woman is, what did you have to do to get good enough for your mother as regards sex? It can be money, it can be children, it can be any topic, or it can be just in general. And so we are zooming in on what you had to do to be good enough for your mother regarding sex. And that is when all of these stories surfaced, because you're not supposed to tell. There is secrecy involved. And so we identify the belief system, we release it, and we replace it. Then we go on to father. And you might say, well, gosh, father is really important in a little girl's life. Yes, but mother is involved as well. Oh, there's your gorgeous cat.
Yeah.
Love your
my
cat.
co-host.
And then we do the family, because the family tells you how to be. Well, if an uncle molests you, there you go. There it is. God, that's a great shot, Judith. That's such a great shot of you and that baby cat. Oh, then in my move into the magic book, I talked about teams. I changed the teams to the tail that wags the dog. It is the family member that makes the rules for your life. And if you are molested by the family member, I don't think you have a prayer, because the rules were set. Then we go into the person you are emotionally married to as a child. And it's going to be your concept of, the male. Then the ego self. And what I've discovered is we play roles in order to placate our ego, because those roles determine who we are. We're not free to be ourselves. And so if you are supposed to be a sexual surrogate, that is one of your roles, and you don't even know it. And then the family child, whoever is the family child, is the one you're supposed to take care of. And usually that child is not involved in sex at all with you, but you're supposed to keep it a sex a secret from them. Then I added 2 new categories. One is your culture.
Mm.
Most cultures say sex is taboo. And so if you've been molested, you've got a taboo subject on top of something that is God-given and God-driven and beautiful. Okay. And then God. What is God's message to you? What do you have to do to get good enough for God sexually? And for many, many women, it's be a virgin when you marry. And that's getting fewer and far between because of society, of course. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing. We have been programmed to be, you know, cold and aloof. And anyhow, long story short, I hug everybody now. I have love for the world, even people who disagree with me, because I know they're just programmed and they're still God in an earthbound body. So I've been able to overcome. And that is why I was able to write my book. Period. Bottom line. Thank you, Judith.
So when, yeah, let's say we, as children, it is to a certain degree, of course, it is perfectly normal to seek your approval of your parents, because in the very beginning, you know, your son rises and sets with them. That's basically all you know. And but if, let's say, if you never get any approval from your parents, plus if somehow the table is turned and you start to be, as a child, the provider for your mother or your father, and father may be gone, mother an alcoholic, and you know, you are like 10 years old and you start running the household. And and then of course you don't, even in that situation, you do not get any approval, and that might set you up on a path where you are constantly looking for the approval of others.
Yes.
And if they do not give it to you, you feel, yeah, useless, worthless. It's really a blow.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, which is why I do a Take Back Your Life session over the internet, anywhere around the world, with anybody who is ready to break free from that programming, because you can be free from it. We think, and this is how our mind works, we are in fantasy. And when you're in fantasy, you can be hypnotized because you're in wishful thinking. Oh, someday my prince will come. No, he won't, honey. Oh, will I ever meet my soulmate? What if the answer is no? And so that's wishful thinking and idealism and drinking and overeating and all the escapes. And so then at some point in time, reality, and wishful thinking is Neptune. Then reality, Saturn, rears its head and you are faced with the facts. And it is devastating to you. And you are absolutely in the fetal position, crying, wailing, oh my God, what do I do now? Because you've not faced reality, because you had to hypnotize yourself based on your programming. If you're supposed to take care of your family, you do it because it's something that's good. And then one day you wake up and you realize it has been meaningless. You still aren't good enough in your parents' eyes. And so why do you keep doing that? And what happens to most people is they run back to Neptune and escape. And they drink and they eat, or they channel it into art and music and beauty and spirituality, which is lovely. But there's a third step, which is Jupiter, and that's truth. And if you can go from fantasy, my prince, and to reality, oh, I caught him in bed with my best friend, to truth, well, I am so glad to know that now, before I put any more energy into that relationship, now I know what I want to change about my invitation to other people. If you come from truth, you are home free. And that's how I can help people.
Yeah, I read one example where they because that type of behavior can also be observed in the animal kingdom. They had, what do you call them? They fostered a finch with Bengalese finches. So the parents were finches, but another type of finch. And but later it turned out that that cross-fostered finch, yeah, that preferred the Bengalese finches.
Interesting. Interesting. And it all starts in utero. It all starts when you're a baby. And I highly recommend this book by Oprah. It's not technical. The doctor becomes technical, but her examples are just wonderful. I had to stop reading it because I was writing my book along with it, and it was too depressing. And I already knew how I could help women. So,
yeah. Did you also look into the subject of pheromones?
no, I did not. I didn't, because those are wonderful. Well, they're hypnotic. They're used to hypnotize. Well, Neptune, of course, perfumes, pheromones, of course. Or I remember seeing an ad. You may have seen it. I'm sure it went all over the place. It was some sort of an ad for a perfume, a natural perfume. And this lovely blonde woman with long blonde hair, how appropriate, just a gorgeous young girl, would approach couples. I think it was like in New Jersey on the boardwalk, and you know, there were lots of people going by. And so she would offer her wrist to the wife to smell, but to the husband, she'd offer her neck. I mean, this is like, are you kidding me? But pheromones in perfumes. I quit wearing perfume a long time ago. I just said, look, you know, and I had Shalimar was my all-time favorite perfume, the vanilla. So I thought, well, just put vanilla. But that is almost unfair to seduce. I mean, if you're walking behind somebody and the perfume is wafting towards you and it's so beautiful, you're hypnotized by it. You're in a state of love. And what's wrong with that? Nothing. But try driving a car with that. when the pheromones, and all you have to do is smell it once and you're hooked. So I didn't go into that because that really had nothing to do with rape and molestation. I was getting down to the nitty gritty and thinking in terms of Vance Packard's book, I think is called Hidden Persuaders, how they put ice cubes in a glass of whiskey to look like genitalia. I mean, it's all subliminal. And when I realized that, I was very young at the time. I was in my teens, and I said, I want to learn about that in college. Well, I wanted to be a psychologist, and my father said, so you get a degree in psychology. What are you going to do with it? Get a teaching degree. So I got a teaching degree. But as an astrologer, I became a psychologist because that is what astrologers do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I hear your baby calling.
No, that is my boy. I have a boy and a girl.
Oh.
So
And I'm a cat person.
yeah, he is complaining. He thinks it's time to be fed.
I have a feeling you would be wise to do that. So thank you again for your patience and waiting on me to write this book. And that's why I'm offering it to you first. And as always, thank you for a stellar interview.
Oh, thank you so much, Maxine. I'm very happy that you wrote to me all by yourself. I didn't even ask. I thought, it would be a longer process. I thought to myself, no, this year you leave Maxine alone. She's still writing a book.
Well, I gave you my word.
Mm.
It was just a question of fulfilling reading orders. When people pay me to do their readings, they expect a response quickly. But I always remembered that I wanted to honor my promise to you because it would be so enjoyable for me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can give that straight back. And so if people want to resolve their own programming, you are offering a one-on-one, or they buy the book and work with the method. And would that be the way to go?
Yes, I think the best thing to do, the least expensive way, is to go to Amazon and get a copy of this book, Your First Sexual Imprinting, and maybe move into the Magic, which was the forerunner. They're affordable.
Mm.
And if anybody wants a private session with me, they just go to my website, MaxineTaylor.com, and look under the spiritual coaching tab, because my astrological practice involves helping people release their programming. And I love doing that. So I'm available one-on-one anytime.
Okay, that's great. So that was it, Night Flight for today with the wonderful Maxine Taylor. And we see you all next time, and stay safe and sound out there. Bye-bye.